just got around to watching The Order, one of my more sought-after movies from 2024 that I had yet to see, and I finally got to sit down and watch it, and yeah, I freaking love this thing. It might be one of my favorite movies of last year. The Order is directed by Justin Kurzel, and it tells the story of a string of violent robberies in the Pacific Northwest. It leads to veteran FBI agent Terry Husk to a white supremacist group, and essentially he has to take down this group that wants to take down the federal government. It's based on a true story, and it's pretty much just a crime movie. It's a dark investigation detective crime movie that follows both the bad guys and the good guys. A lot of this movie feels very similar to something in the vein of True Detective. This felt like a real-life True Detective in how its characters are depicted, specifically the detectives. These characters who are not exactly the best of people, the brightest, happiest, heroic people. They are struggling characters. They are people that have some downsides to them, right? They're not the best. Jude Law plays the main FBI guy here, the guy Terry Husk, and he is so engaging to watch. He's somebody that cares deeply about solving this case, but man, oh man, does he have issues, and I just love Jude Law. I love getting to watch him act. Everything he's in, he elevates to the highest extent, and this is no different. He's so good in this film. It's also nice seeing Ty Sheridan around. He plays another cop in this movie, and he is also excellent. Does not get enough work these days, but I do like me some Ty Sheridan. The biggest performance in this movie, though, and the one that everybody watching this film will be talking about, is Nicholas Hoult, who, surprise, surprise, Nicholas Holt's amazing, right? That shouldn't be a shock anymore. But he plays Bob Matthews, who is the leader of this fringe sort of white supremacist, white nationalist group that's planning to do all of these terror attacks and these bank robberies, right? And he is so freaking amazing in this movie. I've been raving about Nick Hoult for years. I think he's one of the best actors that's yet to really have his big breakout moment, and I think last year, specifically the end of the year, kind of was that moment for him. He had Nosferatu, he had Juror number 2, and now he's had The Order, and later in the year he will have Superman. Like, this is Nick Holt's time. He's conquering Hollywood, and I love to see it. He plays this character in a way that makes him sort of understandable. Not understandable for why he believes the things that he does, even though there is an element of that there, this idea of radicalizing younglings, radicalizing little kids. But he's believable in the sense of who he is and how he gets people to follow him. He's this guy that's got this odd charm to him, despite the fact that he is an awful person and all the evidence is there to suggest it, not just in the flags with the swastika, right, the Nazi flags and all this other stuff, but he's just in his relationships, how he treats women, how he's sleeping with these different people, how he's leading all these men away from, like, decent, comfortable lives into this, obvious suicidal pit that he's taking them down. It's kind of crazy, the fact that people actually latch on to him, but his performance and the charm that he has is so good, you can't take your eyes off of him, and you kind of get it. This movie's biggest strength is the way it's able to build and sustain tension. This film is full of suspension throughout its bank robbery sequences, which I think are put very well together, both in them robbing armored trucks and actual banks. They're so tense. You're sitting on the edge of your seat for every single moment of them, trying to see how this chaotic situation is actually going to unfold. They're violent enough, not to the point where it's, unrealistic. Obviously, it's based on a true story, so they got to be somewhat realistic, but they're violent to a point that lets you know the grave consequences of each and every one of these situations. But even scenes outside the robbery, just confrontation moments, where there's a scene where Nick Hoult is meeting with another member of the white nationalists. I believe it might be his father, but it's the guy that runs, like, the whole church, and they're, like, a little bit at odds at this moment, and it's just a great scene that's filled with suspense, and it's done super well. The performances of everybody involved are amazing. And this film does really feel like a manhunt. It feels like the FBI is just behind these guys. They're trying to find them, and they're one step behind the entire freaking movie. Even at the end, it still feels like, wait a minute, like, is he about to Michael Myers this thing? And because of that, it just ends up being an extremely well-paced, enjoyable thriller in a weird way. And I absolutely loved it. And it is about an interesting subject of American history. I mean, white nationalism, racist, the KKK, these are things that we all can understandably look at and say, those are bad. These people are bad dudes. What they want to do is really bad. So it makes them an easy bad guy to actually root against, which makes this a very fascinating film about good guys versus bad guys, where the good guys are very complex and aren't exactly black and white when it comes to their motives and who they are as people, and the bad guys are confusingly charming. It makes the whole film just work even better, and all the characters' motivations and everything behind it. It's just a very solid script and a beautifully shot movie that just does a lot right. My only little gripe that pulls down the score a tad bit is I feel like there is a little too much gaslighting of the audience. I mean, like, they continue to tell you the threat of Nick Hoult and his group is so big. These guys are going to take over Washington, D.C. They are literally a massive army, and the whole time I'm like, well, this is a true story, so obviously they don't do that. But also, like, let's be realistic. they were never going to do that. And obviously with how the movie resolves and how they eventually confront, like, there's never a point where it feels like they're up against an army. It feels like they're up against a splinter group of white supremacists. But that's not how they sort of sell that to the audience throughout the film, which it kind of drags it down, because it built up this expectation of this gigantic third act that you would get if this was a fictional action movie, but of course it's not. It's a true story. It's a true detective, baby. The true real-world detective story. So, like, obviously that wasn't going to happen, and the conclusion, although I found to be satisfying, is not sort of what you're gaslight into believing that it's going to be. But I absolutely loved this movie. I thought it was fantastic, completely underrated, it needed a better marketing campaign, needed a better poster. The poster just kind of sold this as being a generic, like, Gerald Butler action film, even though Gerard Butler's not even in this. But this is a deeply complex drama, crime story that tells a very unique story that has a great villain performance from Nick Holt, an amazing sort of hero performance from Jude Law, and this is just something, this is the type of movie that 20 years ago would have been like the biggest hit of the season, would have been a big Oscar contender, but now, in 2024, 2025, the state that the movie industry's in, it's just kind of a movie that, you know, a few fringe YouTubers talk about and rave about and tell you, hey, this is a banger of a movie, you should go watch it, and then you all at home say, no, we're gonna watch anything else, and that's a shame. This is a great movie. So I will give The Order a 4.5 out of 5, and a gigantic recommendation to go check this one out on your free time. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more notifications. I'll see you in the next one.